Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tapped Out to Pro Wrestling Podcast. Now please welcome your host, Bryce Banfield.
There's something fucking wrong with me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another Tapped Out to Pro Wrestling podcast. Look at this shit, man. I just keep upgrading the set as much as I possibly can, and now we have this little riser deal. We have more figures added. This thing looks insane, honestly. This guy was figure of the week at one point. Yeah, this is crazy. Anyway, I'm going to be adding more eventually. I plan on getting like a big backdrop right here. That would look pretty sick. I want to get some lights. I want to get different lights in the ceiling that look brighter. I want to get some lights here that face me so you could see me better. I have a lot of ideas, but yeah. Before we get into this episode, I just want to explain. During this episode, we're going to be switching back and forth between this set and the old set because I recorded an episode 2 days ago that I feel like was just a little bit short. So I decided to record this stuff so that I could throw this before all of everything that I recorded 2 days ago. Yeah, if that makes sense. So that I can make the episode just a little bit longer because I feel like it needed to be. I don't know, just personally, I felt that way for you guys. I felt like you deserved a longer episode than what I was giving you originally. So, yeah. I decided to give you 2 top 5 lists in this episode because I'm about to be giving you another top 5 list in a couple seconds. But before we get into that, I have something else that I have to announce. I'm sure the question eventually is going to be thrown out there if it hasn't yet, but where has the universe mode gone? Where is the universe mode? Yeah, that's a good question. Guys, I got to be honest. 2K sucks. 2K, WWE 2K24 sucks. I tried getting on the game the other day to start recording an episode of the universe mode, and I went to go edit some of my superstars in the way that I wanted them for the episode. And when I went to go into my created superstars, the game just crashed. And I didn't understand why I did that. So I went to go try again. And it crashed again. And then I went to go do it again. And it crashed again. Now I can use my creator wrestlers, but I can't fix them. And as some of you guys may know, 2K has this thing where when you go to download new people on your game, which I can't do that anymore either because it crashes every time. When you go to do that, some of the Creator Wrestler logos get randomly pasted on other superstars. It's happened. I've seen it on other people's games. It's happened in my game. You could even see it in the universe mode sometimes when Ethan Page has that shoelace logo on the back of his elbow. And I hated that because that was supposed to be his cross tattoo and it was just some shoelace design because of 2K sucking. I want to give you guys the best content possible and that's not it. So I couldn't post. I did record Downward Spiral. I just didn't edit it. I did record the episode before Downward Spiral. Again, I just did not edit it. And honestly, I don't know if I'm going to. For the sole fact of how much 2K sucks. It's just not the content that I want to give you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to restart. Throughout downloading all the superstars, throughout downloading all the creator and arenas, I'm going to really pay attention to make sure that this does not happen again. And hopefully the second time around, we can get the universe mode to work. I will keep you guys updated on this. But as of right now, the universe mode, in fact, is taking a hiatus, which I'm not happy about myself, but it has to happen. That's why you guys have been seeing some of these gameplay recreations because I have to take a break on the universe mode for now just so I can fix it. So give me time, guys. I promise I'm doing this for you. So let's kick this episode off with our first top 5 list. We have 2 top 5 lists on this episode. So this top 5 list is going to be one that, honestly, I think I'm going to come back to in the future. This has no particular sense to it. This doesn't mean that one is better than the other. I just wanted to give you guys a top 5 list of some of the best feuds that I feel like should be recognized by wrestling fans and just wrestling in general. And if you guys have not seen any of these feuds or any matches from these feuds, go out and watch them because they're really entertaining. I'm going to be giving you guys the matches, the years of the matches, and who won the matches, but I will not be discussing what happens in said match. And stipulations as well. But yeah, I'm not going to be giving you guys what happens in them, so you guys can watch them yourselves and watch the rivalry. And let's get into this. So yeah, the top 5 feuds that I feel should be recognized. Number 5, we have Sting and Vader. Sting and Vader, personally, is one of those feuds that you look back at as a wrestling fan, and in a sense, yeah, it is a little bit cartoonish, but the wrestling matches these guys would put on were really entertaining. And really, if you just look at it from just a fan, I guess, I don't know, not really a wrestling fan, but just a fan of what you're watching, it's entertaining to see these guys having fun with what they're doing. But more importantly, let's just go down the matches that Sting and Vader had, because they are the most important part of these feuds. In 1992 at the Great American Bash for the WCW World title, Vader did in fact beat Sting and win the World Championship off of Sting. And they would meet yet again in 1992, where they would fight at Starrcade in the King of Cable tournament final, where Sting did in fact beat Vader this time around. So far, Vader has a win over Sting. Sting has a win over Vader. Man, the King of Cable tournament, that's an interesting concept. I would love to see, like, I don't know, I'm sure there's a promotion that does streaming, right? Like streaming on Twitch or streaming on YouTube. A king of the internet, or like a king of, I don't know, king of the chat. I don't know, something crazy like that would be interesting. And then finally, in 1993 at Super Brawl 3, the White Castle of Fear leather strap match, Big Van Vader did in fact beat Sting in that match. I believe that was the match from the Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal. Vader is the man. I mean, come on. You guys could clearly tell I am a Vader guy, and I'm also a Sting guy. I gotta give it to Sting. Sting is a guy who I definitely, need more figures of. Preferably short hair Sting. But yeah, Sting is just one of those wrestlers who's generational. He's been around for years. He's wrestled the best of the best, including Vader. The names that this guy, Sting, has wrestled are just incredible. No pun intended. That's not just the coolest. That's not just the best. That's just incredible. And then at number 4, we have a feud from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Hiroshi Tanahashi and Shinsuke Nakamura. When these two would step in the ring together, they would beat the hell out of each other. I remember when I was in high school, specifically my senior year, is when I tapped into Japanese wrestling more. I feel like that was when I was really falling in love with Japanese wrestling and paying attention to it more. And that's when I discovered this feud. And the matches that I've seen between Shinsuke Nakamura and Hiroshi Tanahashi, specifically some of the first ones I'm going to be talking about, man, these two, I got to be honest, and it's not going to be PG, these two beat the fuck out of each other. These two just did not hold back whatsoever. I mean, these guys would slap the piss out of one another. It was not pretty. But Nakamura would debut in 2002 to New Japan Pro Wrestling, while Hiroshi Tanahashi would join in 2004. Nakamura and Tanahashi first clashed in the mid-2000s, with their initial encounters primarily in multi-man tag matches and undercard matches. But then they would finally meet one-on-one in 2005 at the G1 Climax, where Shinsuke Nakamura would get the victory over Hiroshi Tanahashi. And then their second encounter would be in 2006 at the circuit final, where Hiroshi Tanahashi would get a victory over Shinsuke. So now, yet again, just like the last feud, it's 1-1. So who is going to get the victory in the third match? Well, in 2008, at Wrestle Kingdom 2, Shinsuke Nakamura got that victory over Hiroshi Tanahashi. And then that same year at New Japan Pro Wrestling New Dimension, Shinsuke Nakamura would yet again defeat Hiroshi Tanahashi to really cement that win from before. Well, if Shinsuke thought that would be the end of it, he was certainly wrong, because in 2009 at the New Japan circuit, Hiroshi Tanahashi would get that victory back over Shinsuke Nakamura. And then yet again that same year at the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax, these two would meet, and yet again Shinsuke Nakamura would get the victory over Hiroshi Tanahashi. And then yet again that same year at New Japan Pro Wrestling Destruction, Shinsuke Nakamura would get the victory again over Hiroshi Tanahashi. And then it would be one full calendar year at New Japan Pro Wrestling Dontaku, where Hiroshi Tanahashi would get the victory over Shinsuke Nakamura. And then that same year at the G1 Climax Special, Hiroshi Tanahashi would yet again defeat Shinsuke Nakamura. And then when they would meet again in 2014, Hiroshi Tanahashi would in fact keep that same energy at Wrestle Kingdom 8 when they would meet for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. Tanahashi would in fact take the championship off of Shinsuke Nakamura, the guy who really in fact made that championship what it was and gave it the name that it had. He made that championship important and mean something, and Tanahashi just took it right off him. And then that same year at New Japan Pro Wrestling New Beginning in Hiroshima, Hiroshi Tanahashi again would keep that same energy and defeat Shinsuke Nakamura. But if Tanahashi thought he could keep doing this and stay unscathed, he was very wrong, because in that same year at New Japan Pro Wrestling Invasion Attack, Shinsuke Nakamura did in fact beat Hiroshi Tanahashi yet again. And then their final two matches would be at the same event, just 2 different years, because in that same year, 2014, at the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax, Hiroshi Tanahashi got a victory over Shinsuke Nakamura. And then the next year, in 2015, yet again, at the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax, Hiroshi Tanahashi got a victory over Shinsuke Nakamura. But that was the last match that they would ever have, as Shinsuke Nakamura would later be signed to the WWE, and Hiroshi Tanahashi, well, he would stay in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But honestly, I'll tell you what, those matches were, in fact, some of the greatest matches of all time, I feel. I don't know where a certain Meltzer would put them on his list, but I'm pretty sure they're high up. I'm not going to go digging the ratings right now. But, you know, these guys just really put it all on the line when they would meet each other in the ring. You could tell that they had mutual respect for one another when they would just, in a weird way, it's going to sound weird, but when they would just beat each other up, slap each other, slam each other, that was that respect that they had for one another. And then at number 3, this one is more for the entertainment factor, where the last one was for the wrestling. This one is in the WWE, primarily on the SmackDown brand in 2007. MVP and Matt Hardy. July 6th in 2007, Matt Hardy defeated MVP in a non-title match on an episode of SmackDown. And that would later give Matt Hardy a shot at the US Championship at the Great American Bash, where MVP would in fact beat Matt Hardy. On an episode of SmackDown, Matt Hardy did in fact have an arm wrestling match with MVP where Matt Hardy did win. But right afterwards, MVP challenged Matt Hardy to a match where Matt Hardy did win by countout, because MVP was a little bit too scared. Afterwards, it was revealed that MVP had a heart condition, so Matt Hardy would not get his United States Championship rematch. But even though he had said heart condition, he did come back for a VIP lounge with Matt Hardy, where at the end of it all, he would explain that Matt Hardy would be taking on Evander Holyfield at Saturday night's main event in a boxing match. Why? But then after making that announcement would introduce Chris Masters, where Matt Hardy would have to try to defeat the Master Lock Challenge, and while Matt Hardy was getting close, MVP went for the attack. And then, at Saturday night's main event, it did in fact happen. Evander Holyfield had a boxing fight with Matt Hardy, where, at the end of it, Evander Holyfield never even knocked out Matt Hardy. He, in fact, knocked out MVP instead, who was trying to be the corner man for Evander Holyfield, but I guess just got in the way a little bit too much. And then MVP and Matt Hardy would meet in a basketball game. Okay. Interesting. Where at the end of it, Deuce and Domino would attack the both of them. Because it was announced that Matt Hardy and MVP would be getting a shot at the tag team championships. And then the next VIP lounge yet again with Matt Hardy. It was a very interesting one, I'm sure. They just talked crap on one another. And then they had a segment where Matt Hardy and MVP played chess. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because it is yet another competition where they went against one another, so technically it counts in this feud. But it was a no contest because MVP flipped the chessboard. They can't even do a chess match. And then Matt Hardy and MVP had a football throwing contest. I'm going to be honest, I didn't even put who won that. Listen, all of this makes no sense, but also makes so much sense. All of this makes no sense, but also makes so much sense. But as a wrestling fan, personally, I'm not a big sports guy. I don't care much to see sports and random events like this on my show. But it will get more entertaining. Just watch. And then following the next VIP lounge where MVP would in fact have Matt Hardy yet again as a guest, Matt Hardy would make MVP face Kane in a one-on-one match. And then afterwards, MVP and Matt Hardy would have a push-up contest. Okay, a push-up contest. That's interesting. But even more interesting was their Chicago pizza eating contest. Not only did they have a pizza eating contest, but it was Chicago pizza. That had to be tough. And then afterwards, the tag team champions, MVP and Matt Hardy. Yes, the tag team champions. You heard me. MVP and Matt Hardy would take on the Brothers of Destruction, where, in fact, Matt Hardy and MVP just got dominated by Undertaker and Kane. So much for our tag champs. But it didn't even matter, really, because not too long after that, Rey Mysterio and Finlay would, in fact, have a match against MVP and Matt Hardy, where Matt Hardy would get a pretty nasty cut from Rey Mysterio's knee brace that would lead to Matt Hardy yet again not getting his United States Championship match. So this is now twice that he was screwed out of a U.S. title match with MVP. And then following that, John Morrison and The Miz would come from ECW up to SmackDown to take on MVP and Matt Hardy for the tag team championships, where the ECW duo would win the tag titles. Not too long after that, Matt Hardy's appendix did in fact burst, which is insane to think about. This guy was just not doing well. Yeah, man, he was in a bad spot. So he missed about like 4 months after that. It's a damn shame. It really is. But after those 4 months, he would come back at WrestleMania 24, where he would twist the fate MVP, who was in the Money in the Bank ladder match, off the top of a ladder. For some reason, as a kid, I remember that distinctly. That ladder match I remember distinctly, but I remember Matt Hardy running in and twist the fating MVP off that ladder a hell of a lot. And then finally, right after WrestleMania, Matt Hardy would finally get his long-awaited U.S. title shot that he's been waiting for. At this point, it has been 9 months since Matt Hardy got his match against MVP for the United States Championship. He still hasn't gotten his rematch for 9 whole months. And it finally happens, and Matt Hardy gets the victory. Not only is this an entertaining story for everything that they do in between with all the different games that they play, as much as I was joking before, it is really fun to watch because they made it entertaining. They were two really entertaining guys. Yeah. So it was just entertaining all around. But more importantly, that underdog story where Matt Hardy just every time he would get so close to the United States Championship, he would get pulled away from it, and then finally getting it at Backlash. That's what makes this feud so interesting to me. This one's a bit of a long one, so I might kind of rapid fire this, but I do kind of want to talk about it a lot. It involves these guys right over here, the Von Erichs, but more importantly, one in particular being Kerry Von Erich. Kerry Von Erich had a very important feud with Gino Hernandez, who was this cocky, brash young man who believed that he was better than everybody else because of the wealth that he had. And of course, Kerry Von Erich, that good old Southern boy with his brothers. Yeah, man. The very first time these two would meet would be in the NWA Texas Heavyweight Title Tournament semifinal, where Kerry Von Erich would in fact defeat Gino Hernandez. Oh, I just realized I didn't put the date to a lot of these. So some of them I will announce the dates. Others, it'll probably just be left somewhere on the screen. You'll see it. And then following that, Gino Hernandez would in fact defeat Kerry Von Erich on a July 20th, 1984 WCCW Sportatorium event. And then after that, Kerry Von Erich would get that win back from Gino Hernandez by disqualification on August 15th at Lawton, Oklahoma. But now I'm going to be more importantly focusing on the world title matches and various title matches that these guys would be in. So I'm not going to be talking about every single one-on-one match they had, but more importantly, the title matches and the most important matches. For the world-class World Six-Man Tag Team Championships, Jake Roberts and the Dynamic Duo defeated Bobby Fulton, Kerry Von Erich, and Mike Von Erich. The Dynamic Duo, of course, being the group of Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams, gentleman Chris Adams. Yeah. And then following that, for the NWA American Heavyweight Championship, Kerry Von Erich would face Gino Hernandez and beat Gino Hernandez for the championship. And then after that, for the world-class World Six-Man Tag Team Championships, the Von Erichs would get the titles back from Jake Roberts and the Dynamic Duo. The team of the Von Erichs being this time around Kerry Von Erich, Kevin Von Erich, and Mike Von Erich. Following that, again, for the NWA American Heavyweight Championship, Kerry Von Erich would in fact defeat Gino Hernandez, retaining his championship. Get ready for this one. Ready? The World Class Wrestling Association National Wrestling Alliance World Class World Six-Man Tag Time. How do you say that? Let's try it again. The World Class Wrestling Association National Wrestling Alliance World Class World Six-Man Tag Team title match between the Von Erichs, Kerry Von Erich, Kevin Von Erich, and Mike Von Erich, taking on Jake Roberts and the Dynamic Duo. The Von Erichs would retain their titles. And then following that, the NWA Texas Heavyweight Championship, Gino Hernandez would defeat Kerry Von Erich in it was a double DQ. I'm sorry. Following that, the NWA American Tag Team Championships were on the line as the Von Erichs, Kerry Von Erich and Kevin Von Erich, defeated the Dynamic Duo, Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez. And then they had a rematch for the championships that ended in a double DQ, but not too long after that, they would have yet another rematch where the Von Erichs would lose to the Dynamic Duo. All right. I got this whole thing messed up. Hold on. Okay. So here's what I have in my notes. The NWA Tag Team... They would have an NWA Tag Team title match where the Von Erichs would defeat the Dynamic Duo for the belts, right? And then after that, the double DQ would happen. So how does that make the Dynamic Duo the champions? I guess because of the double DQ, I guess it just gives the belts to the Dynamic Duo? I don't know. But I guess after that, the Von Erichs would defeat the champions and win the titles, I guess? I don't know. Not too long after that. Okay, so there's just a lot of the same match over and over. Kerry Von Erich and Kevin Von Erich taking on the dynamic duo. They would wrestle each other a lot throughout this time period. I'm sorry. It's very confusing. It's very... I gotta like screenshot my notes. Maybe it'll make sense when you guys see it, but more importantly, the match to look for when it comes to that match specifically is the hair versus hair match where Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams do in fact get their heads shaved. That is probably the most entertaining match in that feud, by far. But I also want to point this out as well. This was the very last match that Gino Hernandez would ever have in the WCCW, so there would never be another Kerry Von Erich match with him after this point, because the very last match he would have was a hair versus hair match with gentleman Chris Adams. Of course, Gino Hernandez would die at a young age. And yeah, it's a sad story. He was a very fantastic, not just heel, but wrestler. He was entertaining. He was almost like a very, very young Italian. Was he Italian? Yeah, the Italian Stallion, right? He was a very, very young, like almost Ric Flair type character. You know, he had the money, he had the cars, he had the suits, he had it all. And then at number 1 on our list here of feuds, I got to go down to Chikara for this one. Chikara Pro Wrestling. Claudio Castagnoli and Brody Lee. These guys had some matches that were, man, hard-hitting. You wouldn't believe some of the things that these guys would be able to do, not only with just their size, but with what they can do in the ring. I mean, Claudio, yeah, he's an insanely strong man, but in there with a guy like Brody, I mean, it's insane. It's insane what he does. But let's go down some of the matches that these two would have. The very first match that these two would ever have, where they would ever cross paths whatsoever, would be the NWA Upstate Monroe County Fair, where Brody Lee and Jimmy Olsen would take on the heroes of wrestling, Claudio Castagnoli and Chris Hero. And that was in 2006, so clearly they would meet way before they would ever meet in Chikara Pro Wrestling, which is super interesting to see. Yeah, and an NWA of all places at the Monroe County Fair. And then in 2008, they would finally meet at Chikara Passion and Persistence, where Brody Lee did in fact defeat Claudio Castagnoli by disqualification. In 2008 at Chikara Tragedy and Triumph, Claudio Castagnoli would yet again meet Brody Lee, where Brody Lee would get the victory in a no-holds-bar match. But even though Brody Lee might have these 2 victories over Claudio Castagnoli, Claudio would finally get his in their final encounter at 2008's Chikara Style and Substance, where they would meet in a steel cage match where Claudio would finally get the victory over Brody Lee. The steel cage match especially is insane. I mean, they bring a table in the match. They're throwing each other through tables. They're slamming each other through everything. They're throwing each other into the cage. I definitely recommend not just all of these feuds, but this feud especially. If you're going to start with any, start with this one. Yeah, definitely check out all of these feuds. Again, like I was saying, we could definitely come back to this list in the future. But I just wanted to make this again because I felt like this episode was a bit short. And hopefully this helps it feel a little bit longer. I don't know. But yeah, I will. I'll see you guys in a couple seconds when we get back into the main episode. Yeah, bye. This is going to be the new set, by the way, guys. This is where it's going to be for now. Like I said, I'm going to get a backdrop eventually and all that other stuff. But right now, this is what we're sticking with. So this old set that you're about to see, don't get used to it. Okay, bye. I recently picked these up, and I figured we could open these live on the podcast and figure out which mystery one we got. So we have these Bitty Pops, as they're called. They're like miniature versions of Funko Pops. I found them super cheap on clearance. Let's go ahead and open them up. So in this pack right here, this very first pack we have Razor Ramon, Diesel, Rey Mysterio, and whoever our mystery one is. It shows Stone Cold Steve Austin, but we have a 1 in 3 chance of getting him. We can get him, The Rock, Randy Orton, or no, not Randy Orton, I'm sorry, Triple H or Hulk Hogan. So let's see who we get. Why am I so out of breath from doing the Shawn Michaels taunt? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you know what? Hit him. That's what I'm freaking talking about. And the crowd goes crazy. Man, it is so hard to open these things up like normally without tearing open the box. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm guessing the mystery one, yeah, it's like blocked out. Okay, here we go. So you get these like little shelf things that you could hold them in. These things are actually super sick. I have them for my Batman ones with all my Batman collection. I don't have all of the WWE ones, obviously. I just found these ones on clearance, so I was like, might as well do it for a segment on the podcast. So we got Razor Ramon. He's pretty cool. Now, the fun thing about these Biddy Pops are you can actually open them up. If you grab the bottom of them, the Razor Ramon can come out of the box, and then you have the straight up pop. Obviously, these are just super miniaturized versions of the original ones. So they're not going to look fantastic. And then when you pull them out, you can drop it right into your little shelf doohickey here. If I can get it in there. Oh, yeah, there we go. You got to like click it in there. But yeah, you can get it into there, and then you have it nicely displayed. We got Big Daddy Cool Diesel here. Now, they did the same thing with the original pop that they did with this pop that really bothers me. In fact, I have it. I can go grab it right now real quick. So they made Diesel, but they made Diesel in more of like a 2011 style. When in reality, this should have been like a 1995, like 1996, 7, whatever, or not 7, 1995 or 6 era of Diesel. But they just didn't make it that for whatever reason. They made it the 2011 version because when we would later get Razor Ramon pops, obviously they're older versions of Razor. Every Shawn Michaels pop we've gotten is older versions of Shawn Michaels. So why don't we have an older version of Diesel to go with our Shawn and Razor? So there's Diesel out of the box. Yeah, these things are wild. I mean, the paint is crazy on these. You know, the Diesel isn't even close to on the right spot on the singlet. On the Biddy Pop, the Diesel logo is like kind of off to the left a little bit, but on the real deal, it's right in the middle. So obviously that's just a printing mistake, but it's just funny to see. Let's go ahead and drop Diesel in there. And then this last one, we have Rey Mysterio. Let's go ahead and take him out. This one's pretty cool. Again, just like the original pop. That's what all these are. They're just carbon copies of the originals. Pretty cool pop. Pretty cool to see. Him in the box is nice. Oh, it almost popped out of the box. No pun intended. Because it's a pop. It's a Funko Pop. And now it is time to find out who our mystery mini is. I don't want to look at the top of it because if I do, I'm going to spoil it. So don't show me the top. We're going to open it up from the back of it. Boom. And we got... Oh, we got good old Stone Cold. I'm going to stomp a mud hole in him and I'm going to walk it dry. We got Stone Cold Steve Austin. Him holding, I'm guessing, the Smoking Skull Championship. Good old Stone Cold. I'm going to drop him on that sack of dimes he calls a neck. Yeah, that's pretty sick. Not necessarily who I was expecting. I mean, and I'm going to be honest, nor really wanted. The guys I really want out of this set are Hogan and definitely The Rock. Those are my top two right there. So we did that one. Let's go ahead and throw that off to the side. We got one more box here. with these guys as well. Let's try to open this one casually and not try to tear this one open. Oh, I'm trying, but I don't think I have much of a choice. It's like super glued, yeah. Oh, man. You cannot open these things up nicely. You can't. It's impossible. Okay, here we go. We're going to open her up. We're going to rip her open. Well, not rip her, but I don't want to see the mystery pop, so turn that thing away from me. So help me. We're going to kick this one off. Oh, this is a little bit of a letdown, but starting this one off, we have British Bulldog, who has a little bit of a chip on his face. It kind of sucks. Didn't necessarily want to chip down the side of one of their faces, but if we can... Oh, you can't even take him out of the thing. Oh, there we go. Yeah, he was real stuck in there. Oh, wow, the Union Jack is on the back of the flag. But yeah, that chip on the face is a little bit disappointing, I'm not going to lie. Pretty sick. Cool to see. We have Dave Bautista. Yep, Dave Bautista. He is scary looking, I'm not going to lie. I don't know who this is, but it's definitely not Batista. Yeah, I have no idea who this guy is, but it's definitely not Batista. I can tell you that much. It is some generic bald guy with a goatee. And then we have The Undertaker, last but not least. The Undertaker, they did a good job on. You can't really mess him up. He's very toyetic, so if you mess The Undertaker up, you are just terrible at making toys. And luckily, Funko did a good job with this one. You can't really mess this one up. It's impossible to do, I feel. You can't mess The Undertaker up. And now it is time... Oh, I'm not even putting these guys in the holder here. Let me put them in the display box so that we can display these bad boys. What the heck am I doing? I'm supposed to be a professional. Professional host on this channel, man. Come on. All right, and now we have our mystery one. Time to find out who it is. I don't want to look at the top. I don't want to find out who it is. And we rip her open. Oh, yes. Okay, so we got one that I wanted, which is a good thing. We got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Heck yeah, that's exactly what I wanted right there. The Rock. Yeah, The Rock, the sock connection. I love The Rock, man. I can't explain it enough. He's one of my favorites. I try to get as many Rock things as I can, so it's a good thing we snagged this guy. So that was fun. There we go. All of the Funko Bitty Pops from this series. Yeah. All right, and up next, ooh, baby, a triple. You know what time it is. We're going to go ahead and do a top 5 list. We are going to do this week the top 5 worst championship designs in professional wrestling history. Of all time, the worst championship designs ever. Belts are beautiful. Take a look at this green original Hulk Hogan WWF championship, for example. It's a beautiful belt. It's a gorgeous championship. It's not really hard to mess up a championship, but in some promotions, it can be done. And primarily for a lot of these, in WWE, it can be done a lot. Kicking off number 5 on the list, we have the WWE Championship from 2014 up until now. Okay, I'm not going to lie. Originally, I wasn't going to put this one on the list because at first, I enjoyed this design. A lot of people didn't really like the original scratch logo that The Rock debuted, but as a kid, for me, it really did feel different to me. It felt like that was my title when I was a kid. I think it's My Damn Toys recently who's been saying that that's like, or no, what am I talking about? Cody Rhodes has been saying that that championship is our championship. It is the 2015 fan base championship. And I think he's absolutely right. It is. And at first, that's how I felt about that championship. That was our title. But now, guys, it's been a while. I'm tired of seeing just a giant W on all of my titles. Can we just get rid of the giant W logo? We tried it a little bit with the World Heavyweight titles, but we still have the main world title that has the giant W, the one women's championship that has the giant W, and I didn't put that on the list just because this is more crazy to me. When Cody Rhodes won the championship, everyone believed that title was finally going to get a redesign. Maybe we were going to get the Winged Eagle championship back or some other version of that title, but we just never did. And obviously, as I stated earlier, the reason being was because Cody believed that championship was our championship. He wanted to keep that title for us, but at the end of the day, Cody, it's been a while. We could use a refresh. And number 4 on the list, as much as it pained me to put this on the list because I love the promotion and every championship they have had other than this, but the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships. The original Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships. While making this list, I was scrolling through photos and I saw a picture of AJ Styles holding one of the titles. I forget who his partner was for a second, but yeah, he was holding the championship and I said to myself, what the heck is that? There was no design on it whatsoever. It was so basic. I've never seen a championship so basic in my life until I've seen those championships. So because of just the basic nature of the title, that's what puts it on this list. Of course, they would later get revamped to the Ring of Honor titles that we would even see today and what they would later become. But yeah, I don't know. To me, when I think of the Ring of Honor championships, a few teams I think of are Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. I think of Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly. I think of the Briscoes, of course, the Briscoes. The Young Bucks held the Ring of Honor Tag Championships at one point. Yeah, I think of a lot of teams when I think of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships. The Hardy Boys were Ring of Honor Tag Champs, right? I could be wrong about that. I feel like I might have to do research on that and fact check myself right now. Okay. And number 3 on the list, we have the XWF Tag Team Championships. The XWF was a promotion that was run by, well, some say Hulk Hogan, but no, Brian Knobbs and Jimmy Hart. And it was going to be this brash new style, in-your-face wrestling promotion, XWF was. And it just wasn't. It wasn't all that. Hulk Hogan left not too long after they started to go back to the WWF. Same with a lot of the other people who were on that roster, such as Jerry Lawler. I think Mr. Perfect eventually went back as well, who was the guy who fought Hogan in his debut. Yeah, XWF was a failure from the start. But it had a lot of young upstarts as well. AJ Styles debuted on that show. Roddy Piper was the general manager, and he was trying to promote the young talent. Roddy Piper was trying to promote the old age wrestlers, while Sable was the one who was trying to promote the new age wrestlers, such as AJ Styles and the young guys. I think Psychosis was even in that list at one point. Yeah, it was crazy. But other than XWF, the tag team championships, I saw when I was doing this list, I saw a list of the worst championships. And they had all of the XWF championships on the list. I don't want to put all of them. I want to put the tag team championships specifically because, oh my God, how ridiculous is it that they have a gigantic plate on the bottom of the title that just says champions? That is so stupid to me. It looks so ugly. I bet you this picked that up. Watching this back is going to be hilarious. Oh, man. Okay. And then at number 2 on this list is a championship that I almost didn't even put on this list at first, but the more I really sat down and thought about it, this championship really was a bearer of bad news. It meant a lot of bad things for just women's wrestling in general. The Divas Championship, it's really bad, guys. It's ugly. It is so ugly. And not only is it ugly, it reigned during an era of women's wrestling that is so just looked down upon and frowned on. And I had to put it on this list. The gigantic butterfly on the front of it. It just felt right to put this on the list, guys. I don't know. Originally, this was going to be an honorable mention, but I just felt like it had to be on this list. And then speaking of honorable mentions, I got a couple for you. Not a whole lot. I just got 3, but these are 3 championships that I really, really feel like almost made this list. If this was a top 10, these definitely would have been on that list for sure. Kicking off the honorable mentions, we have Bradshaw's Hardcore Championship. Yeah, that thing was ugly, man. I'll tell you what, just a gigantic circle of gold with a Texas flag in the middle of it with no side plates. And then it just has a bunch of buckles just on the strap. I don't know, man. That thing to me is just so ugly. It was close. It was close to being on this list. But I got to say, not as close as Tommy Dreamer's Hardcore Championship. I really want to know what belt is underneath that license plate, you know? Because clearly they had to screw on a license plate over a championship belt to put the license plate on there, right? So I want to know, like, what's under the license plate. I want to see them unscrew that, you know? But anyway, I don't know. This belt, of course it fit Tommy Dreamer, but it's just not a pretty belt. The barbed wire on it, it's not pretty at all. It's not pretty to look at. It's not a pretty belt. And then finally, the WWE Cruiserweight Championship of the 2010s. Of course, more importantly, the 2015 era, 2016. The purple title. I've always had a distaste for that championship. It just looks so ugly. The silver plates, the purple strap. Why purple? Why did I get it, like 205. I get it. Cruiserweight Classic. Yes, everything was purple. But man, was that belt ugly. It got a revamp eventually when it went over to NXT and the strap became black. It looked a little bit better then, but it still just wasn't great, man. The shape of it was so strange, that like oval shape. A lot of people wanted the WWE to just bring back the original Cruiserweight Championship, but that was just never going to happen. Jesus, so gassy. That was just going to be a fever dream forever. You know, they were never, ever going to bring back the original Cruiserweight Championship as much as we wanted them to. But yeah, it's an ugly belt. And then finally, the number 1 spot on this list. There's only one title that I can give it to, with a strap that is not green like that one, but more puke green, and a gigantic gold circle in the middle that says 24/7. Yes, the 24/7 championship by far has to be the ugliest championship I have ever seen in my entire life. When Mick Foley debuted that thing, everyone hated it. Everyone was posting about how ugly it was and how, honestly, people felt the WWE was just disrespecting Mick Foley by letting him debut that championship. Of course, we all understood the implications of it. You know, Mick Foley was trying to point out the fact that we were going to go back to the Hardcore Championship. Or more importantly, we were going to go back to that crazy, wacky 24/7 style. But really, it wasn't what it used to be. I mean, of course, like, yes, it was entertaining for sure. What R-Truth was doing was fun. Drake Maverick put a lot of work into what he was doing as well. But it just wasn't what the Hardcore Championship was. And I don't think realistically, even if they were to do it today, even if when Raw moves to Netflix, they go to bring back the Hardcore Championship, it can't be done. It's just going to be that filler belt that all of the guys who just want to do something on the roster are going to get thrown into, no matter what. So, All right, guys, and on this week's episode, I got a fun little episode here for you. I got something fun we're going to talk about right now. We're going to be going down the history of the steel cage match. Yes, of course, the solid steel cage was brought into professional wrestling, and man, is it one of the most deadliest matches we've ever seen. We've seen a lot of variants within the steel cage, such as, we're going to go down into that. I'm not going to spoil anything just yet, but I mainly just want to bring up the fact that the steel cage match is important when it comes to professional wrestling, especially when it comes to ending a rivalry. And not even really ending, just being a part of a rivalry. One really good example of that is the Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio steel cage match from Friday Night SmackDown, I feel. The main reason I'm pointing this one out is because when that match happened, it had a lot of implications going into it. It was Eddie Guerrero's last chance to get a victory over the guy who he was never, ever able to get a win over. And not only was it that, he was going to get that win in a match that personally made sense for them to be in with how aggressive and angry their feud was. Their feud at this point was to the boiling point. I mean, they were driving each other insane. You know, at this point, it's after the Dominic Mysterio stuff, so yeah, these guys hated each other. So yeah, there had to be a winner in this match, and this steel cage was going to give us that winner, and man, was it brutal. But yeah, let me just give you the little rundown, the history of the steel cage. The original steel cage match was introduced by the National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA, in the 1930s. That was relatively modest by modern standards and had a chicken wire frame. Could you imagine that? Just a big old cage of chicken wire, man. That must be dangerous. That's gotta be just chicken wire, because chicken wire is sharp, man. You can get cut pretty nasty on chicken wire, I feel. That chicken wire frame would later be adapted to a chicken wire frame that had steel bars on the outside that would support the frame so that you were able to climb the cage. WWE's original steel cage was a staple of wrestling matches for several decades, but it eventually fell out of favor with audiences and was replaced with a more modern and visual appealing cage. There were several reasons why WWE decided to stop using the original steel cage. First and foremost, the violent nature of steel cage matches became less popular with audiences as WWE evolved into a more family-friendly product in the late 1980s and early 1990s. So because of the more PG golden era, the steel cage matches were kind of more watered down. Of course, it's not like they just weren't done. We would have steel cage matches within that era, but they weren't used as much. They were more used for the very, very important stories, the very, very important moments in wrestling. Such as like WrestleMania 2, you know, when Hulk Hogan and King Kong Bundy had their steel cage match. It kind of came out of nowhere. They weren't really doing steel cage matches much then. But yeah, they had to get a steel cage match for that match. Because it's WrestleMania 2. You need something big. You can't just have Hulk Hogan and King Kong Bundy. People are not going to come in for just Hulk Hogan and King Kong Bundy. But if you put them in a cage, oh yeah, people will be there for that. Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania will be running wild that night. The original steel cage matches were often bloody affairs, with wrestlers using the steel bars to their advantage and slamming each other into the cage. I mean, of course, you know, great examples of that are a lot of the NWA cage matches from way early on. Not to go into WWE for a second, to go into the NWA ones. Those were insane for a minute. Think about like Ric Flair, some of those battles he had when he was coming out of the steel cage, just drenched in blood, holding the NWA world title. It's a disgusting visual, man. It's nasty to see, but it's also beautiful in a way because the work that Ric Flair put in to get to that point paid off, if that makes any sense. I feel like that makes sense it makes sense to the wrestling fans, for sure. These matches were intense and exciting, but they also appealed to a more niche audience. Another factor in the decision to stop using the original steel cage was the cage's lack of visual appeal. While the thick steel bars on the original steel cage were functional and served their purpose, they weren't necessarily visually appealing. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, WWE began to use a new, more visually appealing cage with a roof and smaller gaps between the bars. This cage was made of lighter steel mesh. The new cage also allowed for more high-flying moves and acrobatics, as wrestlers could climb all the way to the top of the cage and perform daring stunts. And now I want to give everybody just a little bit of a rundown of just various different steel cage matches you would see throughout the professional wrestling world. Obviously, there are a lot of different styles of steel cages, but I just want to give a rundown of just specifically the major TV steel cages. These are the steel cages that you would see on primetime television. Kicking it off, obviously, we have the original steel cage, which is the one that we were talking about earlier, just the straight-up chicken wire, which would later be adapted to the chicken wire with the steel bar frame. And then from the original steel cage, we had the blue bar cage, where it was a very, very thick steel cage with just bright blue bars. It was a very, very cool-looking cage. I personally love that cage. I miss it, honestly. I miss the big blue cage. I don't know. But it fit that era. It definitely does not fit today's wrestling. I could not see, like, I don't know, let's say Dominic Mysterio taking on Damian Priest in a blue steel cage. It's just, I don't see it. But I will always see Hulk Hogan taking on literally anybody in a big blue steel cage any day. I don't know, maybe like him and Brutus Beefcake against Macho Man and Zeus, you know? And then from the blue steel cage, we went to the Attitude Era, which gave us the black steel cage. This one was used primarily in Steve Austin taking on Mr. McMahon, when Big Show threw Steve Austin into the side wall and it came off, and Steve Austin fell off and won the cage match that way. But it was a big deal for Paul White, his debut. And yeah, man, the black steel cage, I think that was a cool looking cage as well. Again, fit the era especially. With us going into this new era of wrestling and us getting into the more, I don't know, the more dangerous, I guess, side of wrestling, the more unfamily friendly side of wrestling, with us going back to that, who knows, maybe we'll go back to the black steel cage as well. And then again, we would go back to the original steel cage, which was just the chicken wire with the steel frame. Obviously, it wouldn't be chicken wire at this point. It would just be a regular cage. But yeah, we would go back to the original cage in the WWE from the black cage. From that point all the way to now, we have the regular cage. So yeah. But then, of course, other cage matches that we would later see in other promotions, such as, TNA bringing in the 6 sides of steel. It was one of the first times in the U.S. that we would see a ring that had 6 sides, but also inside of a big cage. Who knew they could even make a cage that big? To me, as a kid, the 6 sides of steel was so cool because, again, who knew they could make a cage that big? I certainly didn't, but I just thought it was so cool to see a ring. Just, I don't know, man. The matches they would have, I mean, like AJ Styles doing dives off the top of that cage. Well, not off the top, but on the top of that cage. And then Jeff Hardy later coming on and doing dives on the top of that cage, again, just like Styles would. I don't know, man. There's a lot of great things that happen within the 6 sides of steel. One primary memory that I have within the 6 side of steel, of course, is the biggest one being Elix Skipper doing the walk across the cage and giving the Hurricane Rana to, I believe it was James Storm, right? Off of the top of the cage, and everybody's losing their mind in the TNA crowd. Everybody's doing the bounce, And then, of course, other 6 sides of steel cage matches, that Jeff Hardy would have, where he would be, he did dive off the top of the 6 sides of steel through a bunch of tables. Yeah. And And then another cage that wasn't necessarily a 6 sides of steel, but a really, really big cage that was kind of almost the same shape, more of a circular shape, the Elimination Chamber. Eric Bischoff needed to finally decide what he was going to do about the warfare between everybody in the World Heavyweight Championship. And he said, you know what? What if that Survivor Series, we put all of these guys who are fighting for the World Heavyweight Championship in a gigantic cage where they have to enter the cage, and when they get into the cage, the only way they can win is to be the last man standing. This was going to be a gigantic cage with 4 pods within the cage. The 4 pods were going to encase the superstars that were going to wait to enter the match. After being brought out of the pod, the only way to be eliminated would be pinfall or submission, but if you do not get eliminated and you are the last man standing, you win the match. This cage was relentless to say the least. It had black chains going throughout it, black steel everywhere, and then it also had the bulletproof glass steel pods. This would later be advanced to a more, safe elimination chamber that we have today, one where they can't get hurt as much. I personally miss the original elimination chamber. There was something just, I don't know, that one is a million times more scary than the elimination chamber that we have now. Something about the chamber we have now is just, I don't know, it's tame to me. I don't like it. I'm going to be honest, I do not like the current day elimination chamber. I wish we didn't have it personally. We never had to change it. I mean, of course, it was to help the superstars at the end of it all. It was to help them and so they didn't get hurt. But I don't know, man. I just miss that old chamber. And then, of course, another steel cage match that would be later adapted into pro wrestling. I should say brought into wrestling from an early stage, disappeared for a while, and then brought back and adapted to pro wrestling would be the War Games / Blood and Guts match. Of course, WWE would bring back the War Games match after it was gone for decades when the NWA and WCW were shut down in 2001. The NWA and WCW, of course, being the pioneers of the War Games match, where it was 2 steel cages with 2 rings of teams of 8, where each man would be randomly brought in at different time intervals. And while they were brought in, all of these guys would be fighting and fighting and fighting until the last guy from each team is brought in. And then the real match starts, and whoever gets the first pinfall or submission is the victor for their team. But yeah, as I was saying, originally the War Games match had a roof. And the roof was a bit short, which would not necessarily help some superstars, Flying Brian Pillman. But yeah. But that would be adapted to, again, a more safe War Games match where the roof was just gone. Of course, NXT, like I was stating, would bring it back from its long hiatus, which was a good thing because we personally missed the War Games match. And when they brought it back, well, it just had a big boom in wrestling again. And of course, when AEW came around, what if we did a Blood and Guts? And they did. So NXT brought it back first. The last War Games match to happen was September 4th, 2000, with Kevin Nash, Jeff Jarrett, Scott Steiner, and the Harris brothers taking on Goldberg, Booker T, Chronic, and Sting to retain the WCW World Heavyweight Championship? What? Oh, okay. Kevin Nash retained the title with Jeff Jarrett, Scott Steiner, and the Harris brothers? It's on a WCW Monday. That was wasted on a Monday Nitro? Of course, this is 2000. Anyway, so that was the last ever War Games to happen. That would be until eventually November 18th, 2017, when the Undisputed Era would take on the Team of Sanity in a War Games match. And then, of course, that was the War Games big boom. Again, speaking about AEW, they would also have their various different steel cage matches. Cody Rhodes doing the backflip off of the steel cage onto Wardlow is a memory that I have distinctly. I feel like that was an insane moment for AEW that they would play forever. But yeah, steel cage matches do definitely happen within AEW. And then, of course, as I stated before, the War Games match, I believe the Blood and Guts has a roof, right? Yeah, because didn't Claudio like swing Jericho on top of it or something like that? Yeah, War Games definitely has a roof. Our Blood and Guts definitely has a roof. 100%. Blood and Guts has a roof. But yeah, AEW would have steel cage matches. WWE would have steel cage matches and whatnot. And yeah. I feel like some other cage matches that I just forgot to add to this that I feel like I can talk about now are the triple decker steel cage. It's not called that. I know that, but I call that the triple decker steel cage because I just find that a lot more appealing. And for the life of me, I can't remember what it actually is. I think it's like I'm gonna look it up right now. The cages stacked on top of each other. That's really what it was. No, I'm not looking for a coal miner's glove. Yeah, they literally just call it the triple cage. The triple cage match, that's what it is. It's just the triple cage. So I'm going to call it the triple decker steel cage. Yeah, WCW would have the triple decker steel cage where it was just 3 cages stacked on top of each other. And you would have to get to the top of the very top steel cage to get the world title or whatever was on top of there. Ridiculous, dumb idea. WCW should have never done it. Of course, there was also the Cage of Death, which we talked about on the last episode of this podcast. The Cage of Death is the more violent nature version of just all cage matches. Yeah, I feel like that's... Oh, the Punjabi prison, bro. How are we not talking about the Punjabi prison? A cage that was legitimately made of bamboo. It's insane. The Great Khali, of course, pioneered this match. Can I even say pioneered? The Great Khali would pioneer this match. And then the Big Show would also be a part of this match. The Undertaker, Batista, a lot of guys would wrestle in a Punjabi prison. It's a ridiculous match that I wish was talked about more. I feel like, hear me out now, Mattel, WWE Mattel, we need an updated Punjabi prison playset. I know that sounds insane, and there's no reason for us to have one right now, especially with them releasing Jinder Mahal. But man, we need an updated Punjabi prison. You just gave us an Elite Great Khali. Please give us an updated Punjabi prison. And then, of course, to finish this podcast off, because that was all I had for you guys for the steel cage segment. Yeah, that's just about the history of the steel cage. We can go on and on forever about steel cage matches. And in fact, actually, before we even get into our last segment, I want to talk about one more. I'm probably going to edit this so this sounds like it's in the middle of the episode. But I want to talk about the Bret Hart and Owen Hart steel cage match, because that steel cage match, again, a very important steel cage match in history. This was a steel cage match where these two guys personally made it look like they were fighting to get out of that steel cage. Now, of course, when you're in this match, you have to make it look like that. But these guys, they really took it to that next level. I mean, every time Bret would try to run to the top of that steel cage, Owen was right there on top of him to get him. And the same goes for Bret with Owen. I mean, or other way around, you know what I mean, vice versa. Blah. But just they told a story with this steel cage match. And personally, especially nowadays, that doesn't really happen much when it comes to steel cage matches. Stories really don't get told much. But this one was a really good story to tell, and they told it. Two brothers that just had this falling out that really need to solve and resolve this issue, and this was the way that they could do it, and they didn't. Of course, because this rivalry would continue, but yeah, you guys know what I mean. All right, now, to end this thing off, as we are finally done with the steel cage segment, we are doing the wrestling figure of the week, and this week, boom! Last week, I did a Elite Legends Greatest Hits. This week, we are doing just a straight-up Greatest Hits with the one and only R-Truth, of course. He's been really popular right now as of late, R-Truth, with everything he's been doing with The Miz and Yeah, R-Truth is such an entertaining guy, man. He's so funny. This figure perfectly encapsulates the era of R-Truth that I remember the most. My collection is filled with a lot of wrestling figures that are guys from time periods that I love personally the most. A lot of the ones I display, like here, are guys that I personally love the most. Like, of course, I have my Vaders, like right here and everything. These are just all of my Vaders. Same with my Hogans, most of my Hogans. But for the most part, like this Macho Man, my favorite Macho Man attire. This CM Punk, my favorite CM Punk. This Triple H, my favorite Triple H. Samoa Joe, I mean, it's my only Samoa Joe, but my favorite Samoa Joe. Like these are just personally my favorite attires of these wrestlers, and that's primarily what I go for. And that's the same with this R-Truth. This is one of my favorite attires for R-Truth, because personally this was when he was just getting his stride, but I was really liking this character. I don't know. I was really into the what's up. I really enjoyed when he would come out and he would rap to the crowd, do his thing. And then of course later he would turn heel and just really let all of the fans down. But I mean, to me personally, I loved it, man. Especially in that era when heels were really starting to become the cool guys, when we were starting to like the bad guys. R-Truth was one of those guys that we were really able to start liking, you know? And it's crazy to think that you could like the bad guys, but it's possible, man. Especially with R-Truth. And in his era too, because CM Punk was just slowly starting to become, you know, the guy who was on top of the world at one point. So yeah, it would only make sense for R-Truth to, you know, eventually do the same. Especially right now with how much everybody loves R-Truth. It's like R-Truth has found a whole new fandom with just the dumb stuff he does, man. The way he comes out and he just acts silly, ridiculous, stupid. He acts stupid and it's hilarious. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, that's all I got for you this week on this episode. I really don't know how long this was, honestly. I'm kind of just going off the rip. So if it was a short episode, I apologize. I feel like it was a bit short. But I'm just starting out with this, so give me some slack, bro. Come on. But yeah, thank you all for joining me if you did. If you sat through and you listened to this episode. If you watched the first one, thank you for that. If you haven't, go back and take a listen. And more importantly, check out the universe mode. To be honest, this is before anything has come out, so I have no idea where we are in the universe mode timeline. So I'm not going to say anything. All I'm going to say is go and watch the universe mode if you haven't. There's a lot of episodes that are up right now, and they're really entertaining, and I put a lot of work into them. So, yeah. People of the Dam, what's up? I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye-bye.